Carmela seemed not to have noticed Luth's awkwardness and rolled her eyes playfully. Always racing around. Si eso es lo que quieres, if that's what you want. Would you like Pedro to saddle up Thena? No, thank you. I think I prefer to walk. She eyed Carmela with exaggerated obedience. I promise I'll see you for lunch before I go. Carmela chuckled and shooed her out of the kitchen. For me, I guess it's if the book explores the things that we haven't in life, that it allows us to take bolder steps, have more exciting adventures than perhaps our lives have given us so far. I think literature's always there to say the things that we aren't clever enough to say in that moment, to take the risks and the chances that perhaps we might shy from. And that this book really does that. It's a real lesson in following your heart and making the passionate choice, the thing that you believe in your core. And for me, that's what a romance novel should be, drenched in passion, and also people finding their way around the obstacles to reach the thing that they really long for. It's a very fast-paced return to the world of romance. With this book, within the first 2 or 3 lines, we have met the man that's going to change the rest of our world. And it's a wonderful evocation of the heat, of the crashing waves, and of the passions that happen on the beaches of Spain. So I think for me, in this novel, which falls in the middle of this Spanish trilogy, in 1976, we're really in a time of change. We've gone through the 60s, and so we have a young heroine who's bringing English ideas of freedom, of liberty, perhaps even of male and female equality, into a world which is entrenched in prejudice, in bias, in the strength of the male. And so that clash of cultures is really explored. We've got a lot of prejudice and discrimination against the gypsies, which, these days would be, I think, very much frowned upon in a society, or in polite society at least. It's perfectly okay to talk about people as a race and to give them characteristics. And so it very much to me feels like a historical novel, really centered in that time. So when I'm preparing a book that involves quite so much local flavour, similar to this one, it's really important to me to get it as right as I can. So first of all, I'll read the book and note down any place names, any people's names, and any of the language that Hannah uses so extensively, and really get a really tight list of that. So I have every word in the book that I'm not sure how to pronounce. I speak fluent French, so I'm generally all right with the French, but I'm not a Spanish speaker, so I need someone else to help me there. And it's then a case of trying to find someone who's really from that area. So in this case, I did a little appeal via social media to friends and colleagues, and the husband of a lady I worked with back on the BBC Radio Rep in 2009 got in touch, and her husband, Alejandro, is from Cadiz. So I was delighted to know that I was going to get these place names right. I was going to get the names of the characters correct, and we get a real flavour of that part of the country. So I had a great chat with him, and he very generously read out all of the names you hear in the book for me meticulously. And so then I record that conversation, transcribe it, and then append it to the text, so that every time those names are coming up, I've got a really nice phonetic indication of what I should be saying. I have spent some time in Spain. I've never been to the southwest, strangely enough. Northeast, northwest, and southeast, but I've never been across to the west. But certainly I think there's a lovely evocation of Spanish culture there. I'm certainly not familiar with the Spain of 1976, that post-Franco liberation that the book deals with. And I think also the book evokes that period, the racism, the prejudice, the misogyny, all of those themes occur throughout the book. And it's not just an idea of another place, but it's really an idea of another time, I think. I think when I'm preparing for the book, it's really important to recognize that there are sections that will need to move slowly. That when you're listening, whether it's while you're walking the dog or driving the car or doing the washing up on a Tuesday afternoon, that those more reflective sections where there's a little bit of philosophy or there's a really calm exploration of a beautiful summer's afternoon really feel like that. I want to make the words as evocative as possible. And so then it's important that in the action sections, we're not desperate for the next word. We're not frustrated by the pace it happens at. But also, it's an audiobook. It's not a film performance or a radio performance. And so there's also a sort of modulation that has to happen so that you can hear every word clearly, so that you don't miss any sentences. And so hopefully we strike a really nice balance between capturing the essence of the passionate, fast moving scenes of danger, of excitement, with those more reflective, sun-baked afternoons where the shimmer of the heat on the beach is felt and we move slowly. Paquita, the old gypsy lady who foretells the difficulties and the successes of the relationships, is really fun. And also, I think the gypsies in that kind of um, very traditional sense of the Romany travellers and the Carlos are evoked beautifully. So Juanillo, the rough-skinned uncle who's desperate to pursue revenge right until the very end. His drinking and smoking and violence, I think that's really well evoked. There's a real vibrancy towards all of the gypsy life. Every time we enter the camp, there are children scampering around, there are men smoking and drinking, the women are on the front steps of caravans or caves, and you can really smell that smoke in the air, I think, every time we're near the gypsy encampment. And also, I think Hannah does a fabulous job of describing the passion of flamenco, the idea that it's not just there as a divertissement, something that we do to enjoy ourselves, but dancing is a passion. It can help us release anger. It can help us develop passion. It can help us see in other people what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I think those are some of the most beautifully written scenes of the book where our heroine is peeping over into another world that she has yet to explore, which clearly compels her. So it's quite a complicated job, I think, because uh, our male lead in this book is somewhat enigmatic. Um, we're not sure for a great deal of the book whether he is two men who are twins, who are cousins, who are separated at birth, or whether they're two men who've never met. And so there's a certain resolution that comes, and I've had to work with two voices which aren't too far away from one another, but that we can actively recognize as similar, that they could be blood brothers, but that we can also distinguish one from the other. And it's always interesting when you're doing a book, not in translation, but where it all happens in another language to try and represent that. Quite often, when we do books set in other countries, because they're written in English, we'll use a set of English accents. But with Hannah's books, she uses so much of the foreign language that we made a decision early on when we were producing The Echoes of Love that we would give those characters accents from the country. It would be very strange to be talking in RP as a Spanish aristocrat, but then to break into very fluent and beautiful Spanish. And so these books are quite unique in that way, in that with the audiobooks, we present the characters with a sense of where they're from, even if they are, in fact, speaking Spanish rather than speaking English. And so it was a real case of melding together all of those things to give a sense of the gypsy on one hand and the educated Spanish man on the other, but who could have come perhaps from the same womb. I think the scene I'd want to be present at is the fabulous spread of tapas that Carmela puts out to impress uh, our our hero when he's there as our heroine's popping into the shower to wash the sea spray off and make herself presentable for him. And the housekeeper is desperately pulling out all the stops to produce the very best tapas she can. I absolutely adore tapas and good Rioja. And so the idea that someone who really knows what they're doing is really showing off for you, I think I'd have enjoyed that.